Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But we are still on break, guys.
We are still two best friends.
We're still two best friends.
Every time you say that we're usually two best friends, I always think there's going to be a guest. So even if I know that there's no guest.
I thought you were gonna say, when you say we're usually two best friends, it's like I'm gonna have a moment where I'm like, guys, we're having a big problem in our friendship, and we're not quite sure how it's gonna end.
Now I will start to think that.
Like, I need
Hannah's gonna friendship break up with me on the podcast.
Imagine the viewership we would get, Laura. Do it for the listens.
I guess quite a way to end the podcast.
Quite a way without
go out
warning you at all. But no, we're just not, we're still two friends on this, but we are doing a catch-up episode because you guys haven't really heard from us outside of the author interviews and other things for a while now, or it seems like a while to us. You still listen to us every week. We've just had a backlog of
you guys have heard us every week, and Hannah and I have not heard from each other in months.
Yes, because just like me breaking up on the podcast, just so you guys know, the second we get off this podcast, we never speak to each other, not once.
Nope, never.
Laura's never informed about the play-by-play of my dog's back problems.
No, never.
Never happens. So we're doing a catch-up episode, and this is just hey, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying right now?
Hannah, I'm trying to think, and it's gonna have to be let me pull up my Goodreads.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes, go ahead while I am pulling this up because I am highly unprepared.
Yeah, I haven't told you anything I've read in the month of November outside of like The Other Black Girl and Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and Year One, of course. Yeah. But some other books I recently read. I read Oh William by Elizabeth Strout. It was one of the books I read because they were shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. I had a moment last month where I was like, I want to read the shortlist for the Man Booker Prize awards. And I got to maybe 3 of them.
What made you want to read those?
I was just on that side of Bookstagram and Bookshop where people were talking about them. And I was like, I haven't read like capital L literature in a while, like something that you sit down and you read and you're like, oh, this is very like, I feel very smart. And I feel like I earned that English degree.
Sit in a coffee shop with my beret on.
Yes, because as Laura knows, I love wearing hats on my head and I don't think my head is too big.
I don't know why I always associate like berets with like fancy smart people.
I don't think that that's the accurate representation of people who wear berets, Laura.
I mean, I have one and I don't associate myself with that. So it's just funny to me.
It's like you always think of that dog in the Extremely Goofy movie who wears the beret and is very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very artistic, creative. Anyways, continue, Hannah.
She's a very good looking dog in that movie. But so I was like, yeah, I'll totally read these. And then I got to 3 of them and I was like, wow, these are like really difficult to read sometimes, even though they're like 250 pages. And part of the problem was like Elizabeth Strout, she's she's Man Booker Prize shortlist. It's a very good book, but she is an older white woman. We are famously 2 white women, but it is like the third in this. Famously, all our dozens of listeners,
all the famous white women, we are among them.
No, we're just very open about it. But like, it's a book in a series. You don't need to have read the first 2, but I didn't realize that until I picked up the 3rd book. And it's kind of like the short narration of this narrator, Lucy Barton, who like in this 3rd book, she is divorced from a husband who she apparently was married to at the beginning of this series. And like, she recently lost her 2nd husband, and her other husband like has some family history come to the surface that he had no knowledge of that kind of like sends him reeling, and he relies on her a lot during this. And it was an interesting read. But I just don't think it was quite for me. Like, I don't think I would have, I loved it the way other people would read it and be like, oh my God, this is so good. I was like, yeah, this is very well written and it's good, but like, it didn't do anything for me. Like, I didn't feel like I was touched by any of the moments. And I thought some of the more interesting parts were kind of glossed over, and I wondered if previous books had more interesting parts of her, and this is
I was
like
gonna
just a
say, I wonder if
continuation
maybe
on.
you were just like coming in at the wrong time and that the
Mhm.
previous books had that.
Right. And so I'd be interested to kind of go back and maybe read the first one and see my thoughts
Hmm.
on it and see if I would ever want to continue. Because, like I said, I don't think you need to necessarily have read all of the books.
Hmm.
And this, like, did win awards or whatever. So I think it could have been a very good book. It just wasn't necessarily my taste, or I wasn't reading it at the right time in my
Sure.
life where I felt like it was meaningful. And I also think, like, sometimes award winning books, like the O. Williams of the world, it's a lot of like, do you know how you can read about a book that has similar themes? Like if you read award winners for a long time, it was like, how many white men can we find having identity crisis in their
Sure.
40s and 50s? And you're just reading like one after the other and kind of like,
They all
okay,
seem the same. Yeah.
yeah, if you're not interested, and I'm not saying that they don't have value and they aren't interesting. Like
Hmm.
I have read books like that are amazing, but like sometimes it just feels like, oh, I've read this book before. And I think sometimes
Hmm.
that this book gave me flavors of that, where I've definitely read books like this before.
I mean,
So
honestly, I feel that way about sticking to one genre in general. And that's maybe
mhm,
why I like to jump around, where if I read, I get this when I read too many fantasies in a row, especially.
right.
And if I read too many like romances, you start to notice like all the similarities between them. And
Mhm.
you're like, oh, these are like all the same book. And it's not the author's fault. There's only a
No.
limited amount of ways that you can like get people together, or a limited amount of ways that you can like, okay, fantasy is obviously more broad, but generally they have about the same kind of
Right.
plot line where it's kind of
Hero's
like Lord of the Rings.
journey.
So
Like, yeah, it's a hero's
if you
journey.
know Lord
It's
of the Rings, you can kind of figure out most fantasies how they're gonna go. But
I don't think that
it's one of
that's
those things.
necessarily true, but I
It
get
seems
what you're
like it a
saying.
lot of
I know.
times. But that
Yeah.
I get what you're saying though, and that's kind of how it feels if you read too much of, at least for me, if I read too much of one genre.
Mhm.
And that's probably a situation with these award winners and these capital L literature.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, okay, I guess I read that book now.
Yeah.
But on the other spectrum of things, I read the first volume of Heartstopper, which
I love Heartstopper.
we both love the Netflix series that came out this year.
Oh, so good.
And
I read the first 4 volumes of that in like 2 days because I
yeah,
loved those so much. They were great.
I pulled the second volume for the library when I was there recently.
Oh yeah.
They just make you smile the entire time.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so cute to watch
They're
these
so
two.
happy.
I know these two teenage boys just like figure things out, and they're
Hmm.
so pure, and like everything just sounds so normal. Like when Nick is asking him about Ben and he like
Uh-huh.
starts telling him, I'm like, oh my God, these are conversations I can imagine teenagers happening.
Yeah.
Where like something serious is happening to you that you haven't told adults about because it feels
Hmm.
very personal. But then you tell your friend and they're like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I wish I did,
Yeah.
but I like hate him so much. I hope you stay away from him. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so realistic. I don't understand how she can
Hmm.
like show some of these like feelings just out loud.
Especially in a
So,
graphic novel form. I feel like that's
mhm.
even harder to show
Yes.
more complicated situations.
So I did that, and then I did back-to-back graphic novel romances. Heartstopper is
Hmm.
objectively better because I loved it, but I also read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell.
Oh yeah, I've seen that
Um,
one everywhere
I always
on Bookstore.
disclaim, like, look up Rainbow Rowell. You should actively choose to read her materials because some of the stuff she has written is not great.
Hmm.
But Pumpkinheads was very cute. It is just about two best friends, the last night of them working their seasonal job at a pumpkin patch.
Oh cute.
And this guy has had a crush on this girl who like works at this one location forever, and his friend is trying to get him to ask the girl out, and he's kind of a scaredy cat. He's kind of like a deep romantic, and she's like, you never even talked to this girl. Why are you
Uh-huh.
trying this hard? And he's like, well, sometimes like the image of romance is better than the realities. And she's like, yeah, I know, but like if you don't do anything about it, you're just going to be in
Never
love with this
know.
idea of someone for the rest of your life, so just meet her. And so they're trying to run around the pumpkin patch to like have them run into this girl because she keeps getting switched locations.
Uh-huh.
And it's just very cute and very
Yeah, it
adorable.
sounds
And you
like
find
it.
out things about their friendship, and you find out like the girl who's trying to help him meet up like dated a ton of people at the pumpkin patch, so she keeps running into her exes.
Awkward.
And she'll be like, oh, Jesse's coming over, and he's like, which Jesse? And boy Jesse or girl Jesse? It's and like they're both ones she dated, and one's really
Oh my
boring.
gosh.
And she's like, oh my God, she's so boring. Like, It's amazing. And I thought it was very cute. And kind of like I got it for the fall season, but then I didn't read
Mhm.
it until November. But still, like, I don't know. It's fun to pick up around Halloween next year.
November
So
is
everyone
still
keep that in mind.
fall.
Yes. But it was very cute and I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
And then this is us just running through all the books we haven't talked to each other about the podcast on. So
Sure.
bear with us.
Mhm.
It's last stretch
Hannah's
of the
list is a
year.
lot longer than mine. So
Yeah, so we get to do a deep dive into these. But Rainbow Rowell, that was very cute. I loved the
Mhm.
imagery. I love the coloring of it. Like, I think Heartstopper is a very not like simplistic, but it is like simple drawings.
really
Like they're
pastel-y
beautiful.
and
Yeah.
almost sketch-like.
Yes, and it's almost like and that is part of like the beauty of Heartstopper, but
Yeah.
Pumpkinheads is much more like comic strippy, where it's like bold
Mhm.
colors and lots more drawing, lots more like coloring in, making everything look like completed, like almost
Sure.
reels. So it was a different vibe. And if you like looking at different types of artwork, they do have very different feels, even
Sure.
though they are two young romance stories.
Okay.
And then I also read Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley. This one was also on the Man Booker Prize, like long list or short list. I can't remember what it was.
I've heard of this book.
It is it took me a while to get through. It's so good, but it is very, very deep. So Leila started this when she was like 16 years old. She is a poet laureate. So imagine the beauty of her writing and how deeply like you can feel emotions with very like specific words. This book was like under 300 pages, but it packed a punch. I could only read like 10 pages at a time. So this book is based on true events, but it is a fictionalized version of things that did happen, where she created a character out of knowing some things happened like this. And it follows Kiara, who lives in East Oakland. And her mother is like in prison when we start the book. Her brother is like trying to make it as a rapper after their uncle kind of made it quote unquote big. And so he's not bringing in money, and she is 17 years old and they're about to get evicted, and she decides to turn to sex work. And during this time, she gets wrapped up in a scandal with the Oakland police, where they were trafficking in girls to parties and having sex workers at parties where they often wouldn't pay the sex workers and say like, well, we're keeping you safe for the night, so that's payment enough. And they were having young underage girls do this type of work for them. And they were threatening these women. And so it is about Kiara being thrown into this life. And then her name kind of gets brought to the surface through some events. And so she kind of gets thrown into the grand jury testimony of all this as they try to indict these police officers. And it kind of just follows her through all of this. And it is dark. It has like,
it sounds like it.
And Kiara is an amazing character. She's very strong. During this time, she's trying to help a kid who lives next door as his mom suffers through drug issues. She's dealing with a lot of trauma in her own life, coming to terms with certain things about her family, and her family history. And like, it's just so human. And she just talks about like, when these cops rip her off and they're like, well, that's payment enough. And she's like, no, it's not. That's not going to keep me like from being homeless. And like, I gave you a service and you're not paying me for my services. And like, it is like, it shows the value of like, hey, sex work is work. And you shouldn't be able to treat women like this just because like you come from a power and authority. And like, and it shows just like kind of the disassociation you can have. Cause like, there are so many cops in this story who like think she knows them, and she's like, dude, I only know your badge number. I don't know your name. I don't care to know your name. Like, and I only know your badge number because you guys are really bad at hiding them, and I'm really good with numbers. And so like, there's so many parts of it where I'm like, yeah, that seems like this could be a true story, and how someone reacts to situations like this. And like, cops would probably think like, oh my gosh, she thinks about me all the time. And it's just like, she doesn't think about you at all. Like, this is
I feel like people
work.
in general just like assume that people think about them more than they do.
And at one part, one of the like police officers threatened her, and she's like, I don't know who you are. Like, and he's like, don't bring my name up. And she's like, I couldn't if I wanted to. Like,
I don't know your name, so why would I bring it up?
Why would I bring it up? I don't know you. What the hell are you talking about? And it was a very fascinating story. I highly recommended it. It was probably one of the best reads of the year. But it was dark. It was heavy. You know, it dealt with a lot of heavy topics. And it's based on a true story. So look up the Oakland Police Department and what happened with them, because it's amazing.
That's rough.
Yeah. So I read that book, and then on a lighter but also darker note, I listened to the
lighter
audio,
but also
darker. I listened to the audiobook last night at the Telegraph Club by Malinda Lowe.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Laura, I adored this book. It was.
I've seen this book on Bookstagram a lot, so people really like it.
It's so good, Laura. Like, it's so cute. So it follows Lily, who, and she like starts questioning her sexuality in the 1950s. And there's a lot going on. Like, she lives in Chinatown during the Red Scare, so there are certain issues like people around her, like, are they communists, are this, you know? And she starts going to this like underground lesbian club with a white girl from school who like introduces her to it, and they like start going together, and she meets like a woman who goes on stage, just like quote unquote a like I forget what the term is, but where she dresses like a man and performs on stage for women. And it's like she gets opened up to this world and starts to develop her own unique like realization about her sexuality and what it means. This book is light in the fact that it like tells about teenage romance, and it's so cute when like she's falling in love, and it's dark because it is taking place in the 1950s. And like she is opening up like her sexuality at this club, but she often gets like the worst microaggressions around the women in this club. And that is pretty terrible. And it just kind of shows you a unique perspective of like what it actually means to be like intersexually, like, or intersectionality of race and sexuality and gender and everything in between, and how dangerous that could be. Which they discuss in this book. Like, it is the Red Scare, so if she gets caught, it's a lot worse for her in this world than it would be for a lot of white women. And so it's a very interesting book, and it also looks at like if like her friend starts having a crush on a boy who could or could not be a communist, and like when they have certain discussions, she brings that up. That's a little bit of a spoiler, but like it's interesting to have these topics of conversation. And I listened to it as an audiobook, but loved every minute of it. I couldn't stop listening. I thought it was wonderful. It made me so happy. Everyone read the book because it was amazing.
How long is it?
It's 409 pages, but the audiobook, I listen to audiobooks at like 2 times the speed. So I think it's like 11 hours without racing to the finish like I do. And some of the pages are really easy because like certain pages are timelines of the events of the 1950s, so you get to like read all about that. So there's different helpful things, but I think it was a good one you can fit in at the end of December for like a cute, lighter read with like lots of historical context. And it is YA, so for people who don't know.
You've read a handful of like YA romancy.
I know, and I liked it. It was fun.
Yeah, that is fun.
Romance is in the air. For books, or for what I've been watching, I'm trying to think. I haven't been watching a ton. I rewatched Labyrinth recently. Love that movie. It's terrible. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's so good.
It's terrible. It's so good. Right back to back.
I just love it so much. David Bowie in that movie. That movie makes no sense. Laura, have you ever seen Labyrinth?
I have not seen it.
You know, it's Bobby and I, like one of our favorite movies ever.
I feel like I do know it's got like a cult following. I have never seen it. I'm pretty sure it's on Disney Plus.
It's on Netflix.
Oh, it's on Netflix? Oh.
Yeah. So you should watch it tonight. Obviously.
Probably won't.
I think you should. But so this was like one of the movies, like my sister grew up working at a movie store in high school. And this was one of the movies like we never owned, but we would specifically be like, bring Labyrinth home with you this weekend. And she, like, it was
like a repeat one.
we knew it was bad, but we couldn't tell you why we had to watch it again and again and again.
Mhm.
And then when I was in college, I remember Bobby being like, I love Labyrinth. It's terrible. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love Labyrinth. And we loved it so much. And like, you know, we watched Dark Crystal with the puppet guy.
Sure.
And like, this is also a Jim Henson production.
Mhm,
He directed, and apparently he like kind of went through a phase in his life where he couldn't direct movies after this one bombed for a while.
I mean,
yeah,
that's probably hard on your self-esteem if your movie does terrible. So,
well, and especially when your work takes that much intense working on it.
yeah,
like,
I was
he
gonna say,
had
especially
to-
anything related to like puppets or anything like that, it's
Mhm.
way more work,
It's deeply like hard on you to do that. But
right? Versus a
this-
Hallmark movie that they film in like a single week, and they're like, well, at least we only put 40 hours into it.
right. And like those make bank just because they're built for money.
Yeah.
So this one like definitely was not great. And you know, there are certain people look up how some of the people were treated who were actors in that film, because sometimes the way Jim Henson got actors to star in these puppeteering roles were not great.
No.
But the movie is just so much fun. I love it so much. So I watched that recently. Everyone knows that Hannah liked Dark Crystal, so she's gonna love the Labyrinth. And that's the thing, like, you like Dark Crystal and how weird it was.
Mhm.
So I think you would be like,
I love the Muppets. I love Jim
exactly.
Henson. So,
So I don't think that that's a guarantee that you would love the Labyrinth, but I think
uh,
if you watch it in the right sense, you're just like, what am I watching? And then it's like, no, this is hilarious. And the way they have like David Bowie, no one was like, hey, wardrobe, could you cover up his package maybe one time? They just like,
they just
he's
leave it out there.
wearing tight pants the entire time, where it's like, well, that is David
Okay.
Bowie full frontal. So that's funny. And then there's just like so many random like pieces of work that don't make sense. It's like, why are they here now and how did they get here? And it's just like different vignettes of like, now they're here in the labyrinth, now they're here in the labyrinth, and nothing makes sense. But it has a great dance. And I remember when we were watching it, like at one point he's singing the final song to this teenager and it makes no sense, and he's like, why do you have to be so cruel? And the way he like lip syncs cruel, I remember being obsessed with like, how did he sing like that? And now as an adult I'm like, he was lip syncing Hannah, you idiot.
It's amazing, like watching back on things that you're like, oh, a good part's coming up or whatever, and then you're like, oh, why did I think that was a good part? That no.
It's not good, but I love it dearly.
Can I just ask, because I know nothing about this, like,
Yeah.
the labyrinth itself, is there like some kind of mythology in this story or something?
So the person I was watching with was like, this movie never heard of exposition. Exposition, never heard of it. You're just getting tossed into this movie. So the entire premise is this girl is like very, she's very like fantastical. She's very romantic. She's like at the beginning of the movie, she's pretending to be a princess, reenacting the scene from a book called The Labyrinth. And then she has to go home to babysit her half brother. And she hates her stepmother and she screams at her for no reason. And then they're like, okay, so you have to babysit. And she was like, you never tell me I have to babysit. And they're like, well, if you had plans, we would know. And she's like, you don't know my life. And they're like, what is happening? And then she gets frustrated that, okay, this is the funniest part of this movie. So they're like, hey, we put your brother to bed. And she's like, okay, so all she has to do is sit in her room. But she finds out the brother, who is a child, like not a toddler, but like maybe 18 months old. So like old enough to walk around. She thinks he's stolen a teddy bear off of her shelves. And it's like, if that teddy bear went missing, one of your parents did that.
It's too high for him to reach it.
It's too high for him to reach it. So why is this baby being blamed? So she goes into the room where they already put the baby down to sleep and the baby starts crying. And it's like, obviously this baby is crying. You woke it from its slumber. And then she gets mad at the baby for crying. And then she yells for the goblin
crying
king.
Because it's a thief.
And so then she asks the Goblin King to take it away from her in a very funny scene. And the Goblin King does. And then she has to go find the baby. King? David Bowie.
Oh, I was going to say, because that's just like randomly. She just randomly is like, Goblin King, take this baby away.
Yes. When she says it, it's also.
What the world?
It is a very funny line where she's like trying to be like, you know, dramatic from this book she was just reading. but then you find out goblins are real. So they're like, come on, just say the magic words and we'll take the baby away from you. And so then they do. And David Bowie comes and she's like, and he's like, just leave the baby with me. And he also says baby in a really weird way. He's always like, the baby. And so
I'm concerned.
She's like, I have to go get this baby back because this baby did nothing to me. It is a baby. And then the rest of the movie is her trying to get through the labyrinth to get to the baby, similar to the story of the novel like that she read once upon a time. So she meets like different people who are helping her through. They have different powers. They have different things. There are very funny moments. But also you're sitting there like, I feel like this was the making of Your Own Problem. And also David Bowie is weirdly like almost in love with her. And it's like, this girl is maybe 15, David Bowie, and you are an adult man. So you don't quite understand what's happening. And they never say that he's in love with her, but he's like,
you just get the feeling.
Bow down to me and then I'll give you everything you ask for. And I'm like, I don't like this, David Bowie.
Not a fan of that.
So it is from the 80s. You do have to remember that. It doesn't make sense, but I
just want to point out that you telling this plot reminds me of a slightly similar plot that happened on another Jim Henson property, Dinosaurs, where baby, the dinosaur baby, he goes down like into the depths of their house because a monster under the bed takes him under there, and then he has to be. Actually, no, he warns everyone that there's a monster under the bed, and his parents are taken down under the bed, and then the baby has to rescue them, I'm thinking, if I'm remembering this right. So some reason he likes babies going down into the depths of despair.
Maybe Jim Henson just didn't.
And trolls, because there's a troll in this too.
Oh yeah, it's weird. It's a weird movie, and I don't explain it well. But people who have watched Labyrinth, do you love it, or do you agree with the person who had to watch it with me who said this is objectively terrible? It's pretty bad.
It's objectively terrible. And that was a first watch.
That was the first watch as an adult.
Okay.
As an adult, it is a hard watch. I did.
That's not really selling it for me. And you said earlier, watch it tonight, and then you follow it with someone else who recently watched this for the first time. So it's terrible.
Laura, you are someone who would at least be like, Bobby
really
and Hannah love this
really
movie.
Good puppet work in this.
This is really funny that Bobby and Hannah love this movie. That's my theory on it. Or you would hate it and it would just bring me joy that you watched it.
Maybe. I really like Pan's Labyrinth, the movie. That's a really good one.
I've never seen that one.
Guillermo del Toro. That's a really good one.
I don't know if I've ever seen a Guillermo del Toro movie.
I cannot say whether you have or not, because that's really the only one that I know of. I think.
I know that they did him on Blank Check with Griffin and David. But yeah, so I watched that, and I've just been rewatching a lot of stuff. I did start watching Rami, which is a Hulu like original about a comedian who is Muslim, and I really like that show. It's like very weird but very funny. And I suggest everyone watch it. I can't really describe it because like there's so many bizarre things that happen in it, but it's like a good look at like identity and the complexities of like who you are and what it means to be a good person, or like a representation for your religion. And like there's in one episode where he like decides to have his parents play matchmaker so he can start having a serious relationship, and like he gets set up with this woman who's like trying to like, you know, participate in sexual activity with him, and he's like, this is making me uncomfortable. And she's like, well, do you do this with women who aren't Muslim? And he's like, yeah, I just didn't think you'd want to. And she's like, that's really messed up. You're having an expectation on me that isn't fair. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting to like watch play out. And so I really enjoy that show. I'm only about 3 episodes in, and it's like a show I like to sit down and watch, you know?
Sure. Like focus on it. It's not one of those like in the background, like you do other things.
Right. And I also watched Disenchanted, and it made me cry. So
Disenchanted, you know, is that the one that's like
the new Amy Adams Enchanted movie?
Oh, I'm thinking Disenchantment, the adult cartoon.
Someone was like, who named these?
Disenchanted, I have also watched.
What did you think?
I thought it was really cute.
I thought it was really cute. Some people were like, it was just
a lot of people were bashing on it.
I know.
I don't know if that was totally fair, because first of all, like people were talking about like the age of the actors and everything. And you know what? This is so many years later. Like, lay off of them. Like, you can't
I'm sorry,
expect them
is
to
there
just.
issue that people aged? Like, is that
You
gonna be
can't
your
just expect
issue
them
with
to
the
jump back in and be like, they look way older than the age that they're saying they are. Okay, well, they are. So suspend your disbelief. They're older.
I mean, I don't think that they said that they were like so much younger. Like,
I don't know that it's ever said how old they are, honestly. But I think people just assumed since they had, spoiler, they have a baby in this show, that it was just like a year later, And
Morgan's literally a teenager
I know,
in the movie.
Exactly. That's why
What
I'm
are they
like,
thinking?
I don't know
like,
why people are complaining about their ages when it's like, whatever. I don't know. It's just
oh
like,
my
so
God.
weird.
That's a really weird move for people to be like, they're pretending it's like a couple years later. I'm like, no, I kind of just assumed that like they've been married for a good long while. And this was just the first time Giselle got pregnant.
Right.
Like, that's a weird thing to nitpick. I'm sorry. That's weird.
The age of the actors is a strange thing to go after. And also, this is not something I think they had planned on doing a sequel to. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like people kept asking for it because Enchanted also has a cult following.
Yeah.
So, because it's one of those Disney movies that you have like random people that are maybe not always like huge Disney fans, but they're like, I love Enchanted. And I think it was one of those that, similar to like Hocus Pocus, they were like, you know what, we're going to give the fans what they want this year with some of these throwbacks that we're going to make sequels to. And so I think it was not something any of the actors had like planned on. And it was lucky that they were even able to get a lot of the original cast, honestly.
Yeah. That's so weird that people were getting that weird about it. Like, I heard some criticisms about like, well, the original Enchanted was supposed to be this like inverse of a lot of like fairy tale princess stories. And I'm like, well, this is an inverse of fairy tale stories in a different way, because we're still following a main character,
like
the villain,
an evil stepmother. So that I think is interesting too, and the way that they play with mother-daughter dynamics and family dynamics is really interesting.
I will say I feel bad for everyone who had to sing with Idina Menzel. Like, everyone, like, people, they weren't bad singers, but it's just they're not Idina Menzel. And like, anytime she sang, I'm like, I am so sorry. Poor Patrick Dempsey. They had him sing one line, and he was like, please don't make me do it anymore. Like, he could not do that one line. Like, and Idina Menzel, like, anytime she sang, I was like, oh, poor everyone else around you. Like,
I kind of feel like they did not know what to do with her character, though, because it's one of those things that Disney now often likes to just like throw Idina Menzel into things, and they're like, but how can we get her to sing? And this was a similar thing where it's like Nancy's character means nothing to this, but they had to bring her into this somehow. And then she was singing that song Love Power. Is that what it is? And that was the other critique that I had seen a lot, where people were like, that song makes no sense. Like, that song is, the lyrics are dumb. Like, it's kind of just a dumb song, but they just wanted to give Idina a chance to like flex.
Well, and the entire time
sing
she was
belts. So
singing it, small spoiler, but the entire time she was singing it, I was like, when is she gonna start singing Let It Go? And then they're like, let it grow. And I was like, see, I knew it. Like, I was just waiting. And like, I get it. You're gonna have some of those. And like, those are
like Easter eggs.
Right. And it's a children's movie. I did objectively say that was an awful line at the beginning of the movie where Edward, I think is his name, Patrick Dempsey, I don't know, where Patrick Dempsey is
Edward, like, is it Edward? I thought Edward was.
Oh, Edward is the prince.
Yeah, Edward's the prince.
Let's look up. I forget his name.
Obviously, Patrick Dempsey is not an important character.
Robert.
Yeah, that's
his
right.
His name is Robert. But at the beginning when Robert, it's like, if there's anything I can tell you is you never know what to, as someone who met someone falling off a billboard. And I was like, I hate that line. That's a terrible line. Why did they make him say that out loud? Like, it's something so corny and out of a
lot of
movie.
His character, like the things that I liked about his character in the original Enchanted were things where it's like, he's questioning, why is this happening? And that's what made it funny and made it a better character. Whereas in this, it's like, he's totally on board. And it's like, okay, well, roll it back a little bit. We need to have a little more questioning from him, because that's kind of what gives his character a little more, I don't know if pizzazz is the right word or not.
Yeah.
Because
and like,
then his character is basically just like, commuting is awful. And
it was just like
Ruining our society, commuters.
he just kind of turned into Giselle, like an
Yeah.
off-brand Giselle, because like Patrick
Kind of.
Dempsey can't pull off those characteristics.
Mhm.
So it did make sense when he was talking to her, and he's like, Giselle, you need to like back off Morgan a little bit. But then like he just didn't make
Mhm.
as much sense.
Yeah.
And so I didn't love his character. But
And
other than
you know
that,
what? He
it's
wasn't
cute.
in it that much, so it's really not that big of a deal.
They
And the movie
erased
is
him
not
off the
about
screen.
him. Honestly, the
No,
movie is about the relationship between Morgan and Giselle, and
which
I think
I appreciated. I thought that
they
was
did
really cute.
really well.
Yeah, I think they did well. I loved like there were so many moments where like Morgan wasn't a terrible teenager, but she was a teenager, and like
Right.
there were
I
moments where
thought she was realistic, where it was just like some of
Yeah.
these things where she's like, at times she'd be like, oh, I appreciate that. And then other times it's like, oh my gosh, why, mom?
you need to calm down. And I love that it was
Yeah.
always like mom. Like she was, you know, like there were moments where you could tell where she was like, well, like you are my mom, but we do have a different relationship. And I was like, I appreciate that, like she's being realistic, but she still loves her, and it's
Yeah.
her mother, like, you know. So I really liked all of
Yeah,
that.
and I would say too, even at times when she was like frustrated with Giselle and everything, she was still respectful of her.
Mhm.
There were never moments, even when Giselle like obviously overstepped, it
Mhm.
was never a situation where Morgan was like, where you would see in other movies where it's like, oh hell no, and like
Yeah.
storms out and runs away or anything like that.
Well-
So I think they handled it a lot better and made it more realistic to a mother stepmother relationship.
Mhm. Well, and even like when like at one point in Disenchantment, guys, she like gets upset with Giselle and she goes back to New York. Like she takes the commuter train her dad was on, and they get mad at her because they're like, you're a teenager, you need to tell us where you're going. And she's like, I used to go around New York all the time. And I'm like, as a teenager, I totally think a teenager would
Yeah.
not think that that was a big deal, when it's like,
Right.
okay, but now you're an hour away from us. And like, even if we
Mhm.
understand that you can be in New York by yourself, we have to have some kind of like time built in where
Sure.
we're figuring out where you are and how to connect with you. And I'm like,
Right,
that's realistic expectations to set for a teenager. And so I really liked the movie. I thought it was
I did
cute.
too.
It made me cry. Mom stuff
Yeah.
makes me cry though. It's not anything where I was like, this is the most beautiful movie. I'm like, I cry during mom things now.
It was a
but
good
yeah,
movie.
it was a good movie. I liked it a lot. Now, you know, we're just watching Christmas movies. Up
What's
the
one of your favorite
wazoo.
Christmas movies?
Well, I always say All I Want for Christmas, which no one's ever seen. Oh, we've talked about this a million
Yeah,
times.
we've talked
the one
about
with
this before.
Dora Birch.
Uh-huh.
And then White Christmas. So
Mhm.
and yours is Muppet Christmas Carol.
I mean, that's not my only. I also like Elf. And
Yeah.
actually, my favorite Christmas movie is How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey.
Yes,
And
you do
that's
love
just
that
one
one.
that I have loved since it came out and I was a little kid and I had the green VHS tape. So that I had the whole movie
Where-
memorized and
Oh, that's awesome.
literally
Where
can
are you,
recite the whole thing.
Christmas? I remember I loved Taylor Momsen for a long time.
I
She was in
mean,
that.
did she do anything after it?
She was in Gossip Girl, Laura. How
I
dare
didn't
you?
watch Gossip Girl.
I watched Gossip Girl.
I never watched Gossip Girl.
Who is Josh Garopin? Kill yourself. I was thinking about
That's
that
Glee,
line from
and I
Glee.
know that reference.
I was thinking about that reference lately, and I was like, you and I used to die over that line. Like, who is Josh Garopin?
I mean, I know who Taylor Momsen is. I just didn't know if she was in anything else. So when you were like, I was obsessed with her for a while, I'm like, oh.
She was in Gossip Girl, and then she started a grunge band, and like because she did that, she started wearing dark eyeliner, and she was an actress who couldn't wash her face, obviously. So then she made the character of Jenny become like grungy, and it was very odd. And then they kicked her off the show because they didn't like her anymore. They were just like,
stinks.
You're a lot. We need you to leave. And so she left, and she got written. And like she got written off in the funniest freaking way from Gossip Girl, where like Blair Waldorf gets mad at her, and she's like, New York is now mine. You are exiled. And it's like,
that's
what?
Odd.
You can't do that. You can't just exile someone from
a city. Like, you can't come in the city limits anymore. Like,
Gossip Girl went off the rails in so many ways, Laura. I loved that show, but I stopped. Like that was
honestly,
one of
it's probably one I would like because I enjoyed Pretty Little Liars. But I'm at the point now where I'm just like, do I want to start another show like that? I don't know.
I don't know. I had to,
And it was so long ago that I feel like I would get annoyed by some of like the more tropey things and some of the of its time things that I'm just like, because I know if I were to rewatch Pretty Little Liars, I would get annoyed with some of those things as well. And I'm just like, do I have it in me? I don't know.
Yeah. So like in the first episode, because the first episode follows the books a little bit more, I read a lot of the Gossip Girl books, and then I proceeded to get into a lot of trouble with my parents about reading them because they were trash. But
okay.
In the first book, and they do this in the first episode, like one of the weird skeevy guys, like sexually assaults the Jenny character. And they changed her a lot in a very fat phobic way, where they hired Taylor Momsen, where like Jenny in the books was supposed to be a little bit thicker. And it was like, okay, awesome. Hire a waif like blonde instead of a curly haired brunette with an hourglass figure. Totally. But he sexually assaults Jenny, and like her brother finds her and like stops it from happening. And so they did that in the first episode. And then he proceeds to be one of the biggest love interests in the entire show as time goes on. And it is weird to go back to the first episode and be like, oh, people just ignore that happened. Like people just pretend it never happened. And so I think as an adult watching that, you would be like, but remember that time he sexually assaulted a girl? Like,
I'm like an elephant. I never forget.
Yeah, I think it would be. I've never gone back to watch, or I have, but like when I was much younger, I haven't gone back as like an adult to watch Gossip Girl.
Yeah, I don't think I have it in me.
Don't do it.
Because is that Blake Lively and Penn Badgley and all them?
Yeah.
I feel like there were a lot of those shows that were like really similar for a while, and then they kind of stopped making them at like 2016. I feel like that was kind of like the cutoff that they kind of were like, okay, people have had enough of these, and now they're doing like reboots of them a little bit. Like,
I mean, Riverdale, technically, when did Riverdale start? That was 5 years ago.
That's true. I guess Riverdale kind of fits in that mold as well, but I also was kind of thinking of more of like the more mainstream types that you heard about a lot, and Gossip Girl was one of them, and Pretty Little Liars. And
I think the problem is we wouldn't know what the mainstream kids shows are now because we're not teenagers. Like my parents weren't keyed into. Yeah, I don't care either. I'm not gonna go find out.
Probably like, Riverdale. Actually, I could Google it.
But like I think like some kids watch like Ginny and Georgia, and you and I hated that.
I didn't.
It was a bad show. I will watch season 2. You will not.
I will not watch any more of that.
What are the teens watching now?
Okay, so like popular teen shows: Euphoria, Vampire Diaries, Riverdale, Outer Banks.
Oh yeah, Outer Banks.
You've mentioned Outer Banks before.
Yeah, because my cousin and I found out that they were, I don't know what. Oh, I know. I've seen things like Elite.
Yeah. American, Atlanta.
So those definitely exist. You and I just do not participate in them. Which fair enough. We shouldn't have to.
Sex Lives of College Girls is one of them.
That was so good. Oh, but
Dairy
I love
Girls.
That show.
So
Dairy Girls is good.
Are some shows that we have seen. Never Have I Ever.
Oh, and I did start watching the one that was like Sex High or whatever it was. It was an Australian show where they had a sex wall. I forget what it's called. Oh my God. Australia. I don't think it's actually called that. I just don't think I can remember the name. But it's from
like some of these we have heard of and have watched. So not all.
Sex Education.
The other thing too, it's very different than like when we were teens, where it was like still a period of time where you had to like watch a show at this day at this time, whereas now there's a lot of streaming that happens, and I feel like the line is a little more blurred as far as what teens are watching versus what adults are watching, because I know you and I are watching a lot of shows that are probably more geared towards teens but still enjoying them, like Never Have I Ever.
Yes, so it all depends, but yeah, there's just different types of shows. You and I probably just aren't participating in them as much. But those are some of the things I am reading, watching, and or enjoying. Laura, have you figured out what you've been reading, watching?
Okay, so I have my Goodreads up. And so I have the saddest news that I finished the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series.
Oh no! How are you doing?
Not well.
Well, he's writing another one, isn't he?
I mean, there's tons of material. So the Rick Riordan universe is so expansive. He has, after this, there's like the Trials of Apollo and Heroes of Olympus and all these different books. So, and Kane Chronicles. There are plenty of things that Riordan himself has written. And then he also has within the Riordan universe, he brings in other authors to write within this same type of mythological tale.
Right.
And by doing that, he's able to get more diverse voices and kind of expand on the universe. And I think that's a really smart move, honestly. And I appreciate that he does that because it lifts up other authors who may not be getting, the traction within the book community that they would otherwise, that they're getting now with him. So I think that's really good of him to do that. And I really appreciate that. So there is plenty of not just, it's not Percy until he comes out with a book that's being released next year.
Okay.
But I don't know how that will be. As far as the Battle of the Labyrinth and the Last Olympian, books 4 and 5 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, book 4 was really good.
Okay.
This was one, so each of the books is kind of like a quest that Percy usually, or one of the people at Camp Half-Blood goes on.
Okay.
And this time Annabeth was the one that was chosen for the quest. Annabeth is one of the main characters, Percy's love interest.
Yeah.
You find out halfway through, but also they're just like really good friends and they're really supportive of each other and have a good relationship. And I think they're really nice characters. Good. So in this one, and this may just be because I kind of like this whole labyrinth and the Minotaur and
so
Ariadne.
You would like the labyrinth. You would like the labyrinth.
That's why I asked if there were any kind of mythological connections with this, because in the Battle of the Labyrinth, it's kind of focused around like Daedalus and the creation of the labyrinth and King Minos and all this. So it was a tale that I actually like to read about. I know that I read Ariadne earlier this year by Jennifer Saint, and that was a good one. And I think maybe it's just because I like this specific mythology telling, but the Battle of the Labyrinth with Percy and Annabeth and some of the things that happen in it, I think this is just like a really good lead up book to the Last Olympian. So I think that's like a really hard thing to do, because usually people have a really good last book in a series, but the book usually right before it is not as good, in my opinion.
That's fair.
And
no,
so
I
thought, especially for like a middle grade book, that he did a pretty good job of like amping it up.
Good.
And like making it interesting and still like having stakes, and at the same time still like keeping the characters kind of at the core of who they really are. The characters change, but not that much. You know what I mean? They stay the same lovable characters that you like.
Well, and also like he wrote a book about children, so I think it's good to have children change and grow with their character.
He is a teacher, or was a teacher. I doubt he does it anymore. He's probably so loaded, but
he's spending that Percy Jackson money.
Yeah, he's meeting with Lin-Manuel Miranda all the time for his TV show. He doesn't have time to teach middle school anymore, but he does have that exposure from being a middle school teacher and having children of his own. So because these books were kind of dedicated to his kids, but I thought Battle of the Labyrinth was so good, and I really like Annabeth as a character too, and think that it's interesting to have a character, that's not just like, a girl character, I should say, that's not just kind of stereotypical girl, like, I only like to do journalism, and
I'm Andy Anderson, how-to girl, and I want to write about politics.
Exactly. And so it's interesting, like the way that Annabeth goes as a character, how she's tough but also smart and considerate and everything. So it was a really good book and a really good lead up. And so then the Last Olympian is obviously the big final battle where the heroes are all the Half-Bloods are working together with the heroes of Olympus, their gods, and are fighting against the Titans to see who will actually control Olympus. And I was so sad when it was done. Like, the finale, I think, was good, but it was just one of those things where I was just like, I know how this is going to end. I just don't want it to. Just like, stop. So I'm very sad it's over, but it's over. And I will say I have been mainly trying to keep up on these because I've been listening to the newest Olympian with Mike Schubert, the podcast. And it's a really good podcast. Everybody check it out. And he has been having some guests on. They've been having really thoughtful discussions, and they had one recently about like representation in the Percy Jackson book, The Titan's Curse, and he's had other episodes about representation, about like the mythology within the books and what it's connected to. He gets people on that are actually able to speak on these things.
Right.
And I think it's just a really thoughtful podcast, but also fun. And if you like Percy Jackson, you'd really like the podcast. So this is me on my podcast promoting other podcasts. But that's
have us on the podcast. Laura loves you.
Mike having me on. Would love to be on there with you. So yeah, my Percy Jackson journey for now is done until next Percy book comes out. And they haven't released like a new cover or anything for that.
Right. It's coming.
Next year.
Okay.
Next year.
I got turned down at NetGalley for the new Emily Henry book, so I will be crying until January.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I expected it to happen. But come on, Emily Henry. I love you so much. Just love her so much.
She runs NetGalley, so
I know. So it is all her fault. She is the person who accepts and rejects people, obviously.
She is actually going through those requests herself. So
yeah,
there's that.
I take that personally. Well, I'm very sorry that your journey has come to a pause.
Bittersweet. I'll read more because I'm going to continue to follow along with Mike's podcast. And it sounds like his plans are to go through like all of Riordan's work, which will take him years. This podcast will never end.
No.
And then there's the show and everything that's going to be coming out. So there's going to be a lot of Percy material for me to hit that sweet spot. I am excited for the show. Jason Mantzoukas. I
love Jason Mantzoukas so much.
He's going to be Mr. D, and it's perfect casting. Some of the casting that they have announced, I'm like, oh my gosh, how could they have gotten this even as perfect as they have? I don't know how they've done it, but awesome. I have really high hopes for this show. Another book that I read was Michael J. Fox's No Time Like the Future.
How was that?
It was really good. So I did a combination for this one of listening to the audiobook and reading the physical book.
Okay.
And I will say, like, this is not a critique on Michael J. Fox. This is just me listening. At times, he is difficult to understand in the audiobook. So for me, at times, I had to, when I could not focus as much, if I was like doing something, I had to be like, okay, I'm going to stop and then I'll just read the physical book when I get back or whatever, or when I get home. Because, and Michael J. Fox has dealt with Parkinson's disease for over 30 years.
Right.
He is also just like kind of one of my personal heroes because he has pretty much single-handedly started a foundation that has raised like well over $1 billion and come up with some really significant research. And he mentioned in his book that in terms of like finding a cure for Parkinson's disease, if it was a spear, he thinks that the Michael J. Fox Foundation is like the tip of the spear. And I would agree with that because they are doing some really significant things to like make a difference in Parkinson's disease treatments and research and finding a cure.
Okay.
But the book was just a really human take on chronic illness and, you know, what it means to be optimistic, what it means to deal with your situation, what it means to go about your day, all these things. And I think he just has such a healthy approach to his own life after dealing with his illness for so long.
Yeah.
And he's also just, it's not one of those things where everything is just like, you just got to work through it and be positive. You just got to be positive. And I really appreciated that he was real and raw and said, yeah, like this is difficult. And I have to do all these therapies. There was a time where I fell and I broke my arm and like all these things and he had to have surgery again. I had to relearn to walk and all this stuff. And he's like, it's really hard and it sucks. And there was a time that he went on a safari with his family and he talked about kind of some of the remorse and guilt that he had being on that safari, because they were put into a situation where they were kind of a little bit worried about like, oh, is this a dangerous situation? And he felt that he wasn't able to provide the protection for his family that he wished he could have, and that his children were trying to look out for him. And so he also like shows like a lot of remorse about I wouldn't say his life, but kind of mourns like what his life could have been at times.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a healthy thing to do, and such a natural thing to do when you have a chronic illness, to be like, you know what, these things could have happened in my life and they didn't, and that really sucks. But there's unfortunately nothing I can do about it.
Well, that's like, I think a lot of people don't recognize the necessary, or not necessary, but I don't think people always recognize the grief that comes with realizing your life isn't going to be something specific.
Right.
And I think that like lots of people go through that, and it's something my old roommate and I used to talk about a lot, where it was like, you know, I am like at the age of 31 and I think like this, or I think this, and that has changed from when I was 21 and I really expected my life to look like this. And now it isn't. And I'm not saying that I'm not happy that I'm here, because like I am happy with the life I'm living and the life I lead. But there is a grief of what could have been, and the fact that like I didn't get to attain what I thought I was going to attain, and both are okay. Right. And I don't think enough people let that happen. Like grief is natural and it's normal and it's okay. And if you can do it in a healthy way, like you're allowed to, you know, you're allowed to have that grief. And too many people almost want to like, sometimes if you are grieving out loud to friends or family, they want to like comfort you and make it better, and not just sit in the grief with you. And so that's something I would love to challenge people to do. You know, it's the next year, if someone's telling you about something in their life that they regret, like it doesn't always have to be like oh, you don't have to regret that. Like, look at where you are now. It's like, I totally get what you're talking about. It doesn't take anything away from the life you're living now to grieve what could have been sometimes.
Right. And he mentions a lot of those kind of things throughout the book. It's a lot of just like reflections, and he's kind of like, I think more so just processing these things than he is trying to like get a message out there. Yeah. And the book, I think, is actually called like An Optimist Considers the Future or something like that. If I'm An Optimist Considers Mortality.
Oh, I like that.
I think that that's really a great title, because it just does seem like he's, you know, kind of talking through things on his own. He has little things in life that bring him joy, like his dog and his family, and getting to do things with them. And I think he also, you know, experiences things like you were just talking about, like people either, you know, pitying him, or you know, saying, oh, well, you're Michael J. Fox, you have all these things, like you should just be happy with what you have. And it's like, just because he's a celebrity and has a lot of money doesn't mean he should just be like, oh yeah, totally fine. He has to deal with a lot too. And life is more complicated than the things you see on TV. So well, nobody knows the whole picture of what he's going through, or his situation, or what is to come for him. And honestly, I hope nobody does criticize him. I've seen many things like lists where people list out like their favorite celebrities, and he's often on lists like this. And so I hope he remains one of those people. But I don't know that people, I have never seen anyone like actively criticizing him like this, but I just think that he's someone who gives back so much, not just to like the Parkinson's community, but to so many other people. He's a great philanthropist. So I think it takes a lot of strength, even in his situation, to be like, yeah, I'm going to work so hard to try and find a cure for this disease. I'm also going to help all these other people too.
Well, and also like, I think it's fair to say that like Michael J. Fox had to publicly retire because it was right for him in that moment to like become a philanthropist and do these things. So yeah, people could be like, well, you're a celebrity, you're Michael J. Fox, you had all these wonderful things. But it's like, yeah, and he had to make a hard choice where he was going to shift and like let go of a certain part of his life, like we were talking about grieving certain things that didn't happen to do these things. And that does take a lot of you to do that in the spotlight. Like I think
he also talks about like how his wife had to do certain things because of his diagnosis and because of his health that he regretted. And he was like, her career could have taken off. And
yeah,
he was like, I feel a lot of regret in terms of that because, in terms of in sickness and in health, she's really dealing with a lot of the sickness here. And I guess his father-in-law kind of made a joke to him. He said that kind of made him feel better and said, well, for richer, for poorer, you're doing pretty good for richer. And so he said, I thought that was a pretty funny joke from my father-in-law.
That's amazing. I love it.
It was a really good book, and I'd really encourage people to read it because it just kind of makes you think about things a little more, even if you don't have a chronic illness or know somebody with Parkinson's disease or something like that. I think it's a good book in terms of like you were saying, like recognizing that, things don't always work out the way we thought they were going to. So yeah, it's a really, really good book. But like I said, if you're going to go with the audio, it's trickier at times because I listen to it at 1x speed. Usually I do 1.5, but he speaks really quickly to begin with.
Yeah.
And then he is difficult to understand at times. So when I was not able to focus more on him, it was easier just to read the physical book.
That's fair. And so, don't listen at 2x the speed like Hannah does.
Also, it was Scribd. Scribd put up a thing on their Instagram that said, good news, we now have 3 times the speed available on our audiobook apps. And I was like, oh my gosh, who is listening at 3 times the speed?
Who? I'm a speed reader.
That were like, yay. What the world? How can you people even hear anything?
I do know you have to like train yourself because I've been able to do some books at like 2.3, but I don't want to train myself to do that with all books. Like I think 2x the speed is good enough. It's good enough, guys.
Honestly, sometimes like 1.5 is kind of my max, unless it's a narrator that speaks really slowly. Like if it's somebody that speaks at my speed, I probably could go 1.75. But for
someone at Hannah's speed,
Hannah's speed, I have to take it back to 0.8. But no, but
Gilmore Girl talking.
Like for most romances, I feel like the cadence is very similar from one romance book to the other, how the narrator speaks. And so I generally kind of like base off of those where I'm like, okay, 1.5 I can easily go to on a romance, but and the same with memoirs too. I can go faster on those, but then there's other books like fantasies where I'm usually a little hesitant to bump up the speed too much.
Fair enough. Is there anything
Scribd is up to 3 times the speed for anybody that needs that.
If that's what was holding you back from Scribd, guys, you can rest assured.
It's there now. I also read Roxy by Neil Shusterman. I have not updated my Goodreads. Whoops. I have just not been really feeling. I have not been feeling apps lately. Like I go on and just scroll them, but as far as like using my Bookstagram and stuff, I'm just like, I have not been really posting.
Fair enough.
But Roxy is a really creative book. Neil Shusterman also wrote the Scythe series. I read that last year, I think, if I'm remembering it right. Or maybe it was the year before. I don't know. They're all blending together. But Roxy is a really creative book, and it's about substance use.
Okay.
And how it can really affect people and change people's lives, how it can be positive, but also have negative effects as well. Okay. So you meet the different substances. They all have different names. Like Al is alcohol. Roxy is Oxycontin. And then there's Addison, who is Adderall, Rita, Ritalin. So you meet all of these different characters, and they are interacting with these humans, and some of them are trying to help them. Others are bringing them to this place called the party. Okay. And once they're at the party, there's these other drugs that are like on an upline that can kind of jump in and take the person to like the VIP room or to another room or something like that, up to a higher level. Okay. And so there's this implication that once people start using alcohol, or they are at the party with alcohol, then they become connected with a different drug,
Person. Yeah.
with a different character like Dusty, which I believe is cocaine.
Yeah.
And then
I would assume.
And then it's hard for me to know which ones are which. I'm just guessing what they are. Somebody probably put this on here. Like, what are the... Here we go. Yeah. Yeah. So Dusty is cocaine. And then you kind of like work up this line, and like one of the ends of the line is Chris, which would be crystal meth.
Yeah.
And so usually by the time that Chris gets a hold of some of these people, it's not good.
Right.
This is just honestly a really unique book, and I don't know if I love it or if I hate it. I can't even describe it.
Yeah.
That I think people should read it. I don't really know that much myself about substance abuse, but I think that for a YA book, this is a really interesting take of how these substances can be really effective in helping people, because at times they really are, and people really need them. But at other times they can, when used in the wrong context and when abused, they can be really detrimental to people. So I think it's just a really, really interesting way to write a book like this. And I give Neil Shusterman, I think he wrote it with his son as well.
Okay. Interesting.
A lot of credit for coming up with this, because it's really fascinating.
That's rough. Yeah. I like it. Thank you for suggesting that. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah. And the Scythe series is really good too. If you haven't read that, I would suggest it for anybody that's into that. It's definitely like a darker, sci-fi fantasy type book. So if you're not in the right headspace for that, maybe look into some content warnings. But Roxy is also kind of a darker book too. And then there's Dry, which I have on my TBR to read next of Schusterman's. That's supposed to be kind of a look at drought conditions and a take on that. So that'll be really interesting. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm interested. Okay. I mean, can't wait to hear more.
Yeah.
So those are all the books you've read?
I'm also currently reading Stellar Instinct by Jonathan Navarre, and I am going to be part of when does this episode come out? I don't know.
It comes out on December 14th, I believe. Or
December 14th? Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. That's our catch-up episode on December 21st.
Okay, so
is Gremlins.
December 14th, the blog post will already be out. But so you can go check it out there if you haven't already. But I'm going to be reviewing Stellar Instinct, and we're going to have a blog post on it on ourpod.com and a little bit on our Instagram as well. But it's a really good book. It's kind of a romp. I like it. So yeah, check out more on our blog, because I'm part of the Escapist book tour. So
it's a good time to have a romp of a book, guys. It's a good time.
And check out more of Navarre's work, because I have a couple of his books that I got on my Kindle that were on like they were all on like super discount the one day. So I was like, oh yeah, you bet I'm getting these. So I'm excited to start those as well.
Oh, yay. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying. I know he messaged us and he said he was very excited to have you read it. So awesome.
Romp of the book.
Are you watching anything?
Okay, so Hannah, you sent me down this hole. I was in a Brooklyn Nine-Nine rewatch, a deep Brooklyn Nine-Nine rewatch.
Such a happier place to be.
And because I don't like to be in, when I rewatch shows, I don't generally rewatch heavy shows. I don't know why, but you were talking about Law & Order SVU. So I switched from Brooklyn Nine-Nine and My Dear Captain Holt to Law & Order SVU.
And the stellarly written Law & Order.
There are times when I am watching SVU and I'm like, I really hope the Brooklyn Nine-Nine is more realistic than SVU, because oh my gosh.
Oh, guys, Law & Order SVU is one of the worst shows I've ever seen when it comes to like propaganda, and like the way it just tramples on people's rights in the show is horrifying.
Also, I realized that this show, like I'm watching season 1. I've watched 17 episodes of the first season. There's like 20 episodes per season.
Yeah.
There are so many episodes of this show. So many, and it's still going. I can't get over it. But
so guys, in my defense, I don't watch the show because I like the show. I watch the show because it is easy to turn on and watch 8 episodes and they do not exist in your head after you watch them.
Here's my thing, Hannah. I don't think that this is a show where it's like not enjoyable, because I actually do kind of enjoy the show. I think I shouldn't say kind of. I used to watch it a lot when I was in high school. I do enjoy this show. I definitely think it's one of those things where it's almost like we've previously talked about, like people getting like hooked on true crime type things. This is a similar thing where, and that's why they produce so many of these different Law and Order this, Law and Order that, you know, a CSI this, CSI that. We had all these different things of that time, and it's because that was like the true crime podcast of the age. But I think when I'm watching this first season, and I will just throw this out there, that I do not understand a lot of the law aspects of it. I am just a random person who has no background in the law. So you come at this from a very different perspective than me. But watching some of these episodes, I'm like, a lot of the language they use is very cringy. And I get it that it's 1999 or 2000 when the show started, but some of it is very cringy and situations are not handled well. And I honestly think Elliot Stabler is too connected to all of
Elliot Stabler should have been fired so many times over. He is the worst cop I've ever seen on a cop show. Every time I watch, so like, guys, I have people who are like, I know people who don't dislike cops, and they're still like, man, Elliot Stabler, when he left, like, they got way better to the people who get arrested. And it's like, yeah, because he's a terrible police officer.
Elliot also, like, not just like the way that he handles the situations with the perpetrators or the victims is bad, but the way he takes home situations and imposes them on his family and gets really blamey and judgy about them, when it's like, okay, your daughter has not had any kind of involvement, anything like that. You are taking your work home and being toxic to her. That is problematic. Stop doing that, Elliot Stabler.
And also, I will say this for the record, guys. One of his daughters is named Maureen, and one of them is Kathleen, and I could not tell you which one is which.
I mean, people do weird name things like that all the time in families, because you mentioned this the other day when we were briefly talking about this. You're like, who names one daughter Kathleen and the other one Maureen? And I'm like, I think I can recall a couple of situations where the naming of children was worse and closer.
Oh my God, it's just so bad. And like, it's too much. And I think at the beginning, the oldest daughter was featured in a couple of episodes, and then they were like, no, let's show the middle daughter more. And then there's like 2 others below them before the wife gets pregnant again.
Dickie and somebody else.
And then they have Eli in season 9. That's Elliot Jr., which is also one of my least favorite tropes, is when you already have a son and then you have a second son and you do a junior. Why?
Why would they do a junior for the second son? Okay.
Why would you do a junior? Whatever. They're like, what if we name him after you, Elliot? And it's like, you already had that chance. You said no when you named Dickie after an astronaut who ended up being a rapist. So like, let's not do that. Okay. It's a weird thing, but like, at one point they thought the oldest daughter who they had hired like wasn't as good an actress as the second one, so the second one becomes like the one who has all the mental health issues, and the way they treat her mental health problems is so problematic. And then all of a sudden you find out that like Elliot's mom is bipolar, and that's why he hates all mental health, and it's like no. Also, no. Like,
I just watched an episode in season 1, and I think it's pretty well known about Olivia Benson's history with her family, that her parentage, I think, is pretty well known.
Yeah.
But so I'm not going to get into that. But the way that they cross lines, and then Elliot Stabler says to the other detectives, stay out of her personal business. Then he continues to delve into her personal business.
Guys, can I tell you
insane
how much I hate that? Like, I haven't watched an episode of SVU past like season 14, maybe. Let's say 14. I had to stop at some point because like it just gets bad for my mental health, where I'm like, I cannot continue with this. It is so bad. They're all violating so many laws. Like, they're all violating so many laws. I am an attorney. It drives me nuts. Other things that drive me nuts about this show, like, A, they should be fired. B, Olivia Benson should have gotten the biggest payout, and they should have never had her return to the police force again, because that woman has been so traumatized by every single person who walks in the room. It's just horrifying.
And they will not leave her alone either. Like, they won't
Mm-mm.
lay off of her. They're constantly like trying to get involved in her personal life or trying to look up stuff about her and like, we're gonna help you with the case. And like, leave her alone.
Leave her alone. Let her quit her job. She shouldn't be there anymore. She just shouldn't. Let her quit her job. She's right up there with Meredith Grey. But like in the most recent seasons, apparently they're pushing her and Elliot to get together. And I'm like, keep them away from each other. He's a terrible human being. Like, and they never even indicated that those two were in love. Like, they indicated that they were a little bit too close from time to time, but never like, hey, Elliot could maybe leave his wife. And now, like, real Law and Order SVU fans who are not me are like bullying the actress who played Elliot Stabler's wife. Are you telling me you don't have enough to do in your life that you're bullying an actress who played a character?
That's really weird. Like, leave her alone.
Leave her alone. She was really upset when like they killed her off because like she's like, yeah, I got killed off because there are bullies on the internet and they all bought into it. And it's like, yeah, that's weird.
Why is it on these cop shows that they always want to push two characters who are partners together? Because this also happened on Blue Bloods, and that character died in a helicopter crash.
Okay.
So they could get rid of that wife so he could have the opportunity to have a slow burn continue with his partner.
So I recently also watched, or I was talking to this with someone, and we were discussing Law and Order SVU, and they suggested having a sketch comedy show where each episode is an HR office of one of these TV shows that take place at a workplace. Because there's like, yeah, like someone once was talking about, like, could you imagine Callie Torres on Grey's Anatomy? And it's like, you're in here again. Did you sexually harass someone? Who'd you sleep with? Who are you breaking up with? Are you moving back in with Arizona? That's another paperwork. Why are you doing this to me? And it's just like, that is hilarious to have like an HR representative, because there are so many things you have to do. And it's just so stupid. It's why are these people dating so much? There are so many ways to not date your coworker in this day and age. There's so many apps.
I'm so confused why that always, like, this is my thing. How often does that actually happen, that people have Jim and Pam type situations that begin as inappropriate and end as inappropriate? Like, there's no way that there's this many things, like situations in workplaces that happen where people end up together.
I did have a friend I know who worked somewhere where two of the coworkers were having an out and out affair, and everyone knew about it. And that's weird. Like, that shouldn't be happening, guys. Don't do that. And so I just don't understand that show. It's real bad. And Laura doesn't understand. But like, sometimes when I'm watching that show, there will be lawyers who just narrate something and then sit down when they're asking a witness a question. I can't just narrate stuff to the person on the stand. It's not a discussion. I'm asking them questions. It's the one job I have. Like,
they never say like, get to it, prosecutor.
Or there's never someone who just stands up and is like, objection, is there a question here? Like, you can't do that.
Well, they'll just go on like big monologues forever. Yeah,
they will, and then what will happen?
So an episode that we watched last night, and this was also an episode that my husband and I were very conflicted about. And then when it was done, he was like, we have to watch something else. And we switched back to our other cop show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. We've been watching a lot of cops. But
propaganda at its finest.
I think it's Dennis O'Leary is the actor's name. Let me look it up because I want to get this right.
I recognize him.
Oh no, that's not him. That's not who I'm thinking of. Oh, I'm trying to remember what he was in. He was in True Blood at one point.
But guys, I will say that Law and Order, the original one, got me an A- in criminal law because it actually taught you about the elements of crime. When Law and Order SVU doesn't try to do anything. Like, there was in the original Law and Order, they always had a moment with the lawyers where it was like, I think we could show them how a conspiracy. And they're like, here's how you show a conspiracy. And it's like, oh, this is actually helpful for people to know. But Law and Order
Mhm.
SVU is just like, hey, what if we made everyone terrible at their jobs?
Okay, Hannah. So the episode was it was with Dennis O'Hare,
Okay.
and he was playing a person who was supposed to be developmentally disabled or borderline, and they could
Yeah.
never. And the language that they used was very offensive. I do not like it. The way that they handled the situations with this person were very, very awful. Very, very awful. And the way that, like, when he got to like the first trial, which was not supposed to be like any kind of like indictment or anything like that, or any kind of like
Right.
decision made on his fate, it was just supposed to be about something I can't even remember what the first trial was even about. If I'm really bad at this law
No, you're
stuff.
fine. You're totally
But
fine.
like the first trial was not supposed to be any kind of decision made on his fate or anything like that. I think it was more about
usually
like,
it's a hearing to see if he's mentally fit to stand trial.
yes, I
Is
think
that
that
what
was
it was?
I think that
Yes.
was actually what it was. It
Yeah, it was a
actually, I think
hearing
this
to
is
see
what
if
it
you're
was, to
mentally fit to
decide
stand trial.
if he was developmentally disabled or not, because
Mhm.
that's one of the things they were questioning throughout the episode. Like, well, he has a
Mhm.
job and he has books and stuff, so how can he, like, okay, seriously. Which is
Yeah.
extremely ableist to be like,
Yeah.
disabled people can't have jobs. So that made me so mad. But
So yeah, and for
when
people who
he's
don't
at
know,
this, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say, for people who have a baseline, and I am not the perfect person, I am not a criminal attorney whatsoever, but being mentally fit to stand trial means you, like, I believe in the New York State, like there's different ones, but it's usually the McNaughton test, which is you have the capacity to understand what you did was wrong. And if you do not have that capacity, you're not fit to stand trial because you were not mentally fit enough to understand what was happening. It's a pretty low bar, unfortunately, because, like, you know, if you know something is wrong, usually you're mentally fit to stand trial,
Right.
even if you probably needed mental health help instead of prison. The system is not great, but that is, I believe, the standard. So just a little bit of background.
So in this trial, they keep citing like IQ tests and stuff like that, and I don't know how they determine this, but at one point they use a slur, and the actor, or Dennis O'Hare's character, gets upset and says, "I am not that." And so they're like, okay, well, they try to go on talking about it, and he's, "I'll prove it to you. I know exactly what happened," or whatever, and he starts to detail what he did in that crime. And then immediately after that, then they are saying, well, now we need to decide what we're going to do with him. And the way that the captain is so flippant about this case and extremely biased and ableist is disgusting. And then also the way that the show portrays this person's fate, in how he ends up going to a place with severely disabled people, and it's made to seem like a nightmare, basically, was so disgusting to me. And my husband both, where my husband looked at me and he said, "We have to watch something else. This is terrible." And the way that episode, I think, has so far been my least favorite, because of the way that they handled these situations and just did it so poorly. I cannot say, I guess, if that's how the justice system would handle a situation like that back in 1999. I don't know. But
so the episode did come out in 2000. That is not excusing this one, because I do know what episode you're talking about. I do skip this episode nowadays. I don't watch it anymore. I can't watch it. I think I watched it my first time through, and now there are certain episodes I will not watch anymore.
See, that's my thing. I don't know what's to come. I can't skip over because I don't know what I'm getting into.
That's fair. I totally get that. That is one I do skip. I completely understand. And that episode is horrifying, because the problem with shows like Law and Order SVU, and this is me grandstanding, so apologies, they never throw back that the issue is the system. Like, the issue shouldn't be the nightmare of like being put around like people who are severely disabled.
And
the
that's the way that they shift it to make it look like the people are the problem. And it's like how about we need more staff, we need better facilities, we need therapies, we need like inclusive.
Yep. You need actual assistance for people who need help.
Yes.
And the problem is the system, not the people within it. And that is the problem with Law and Order SVU with that entire episode. All they're talking about is how horrible what this guy did was to this person was, which is awful. I am not discounting.
There's nobody excusing that.
Horrifying. No. I'm not excusing what that person did, what he did in that episode. But also the way the cops handle him is inexcusable because they are not doing it responsibly or with any efficacy or ethically. Like everything they do is incredibly like, and I've talked to Laura a little bit about this. The theory of the justice system is retribution and restitution, and it is kind of split on what people think they need. So you are supposed to pay for your crimes, but you are also supposed to make this, like, make the world whole again, like in any way you possibly can. You can never take back what you did back, but you are like the justice system is supposed to provide some kind of assistance towards those who are harmed and to make sure that they are building towards making sure that doesn't happen again. So if someone is not fit to stand trial, they do need the mental health help. And then if they can later pay for their crimes, they can, or if we determine that they were not in their right state of mind and with assistance can get to a functionality where they now would never do something like that, they can be released from prison. There are different ways of doing different things. Not everything is a monolith, but like the entire point of the system is to try to do those things. And we fail at a lot of turns. And Law and Order SVU, I always watch through the lens now. And it is a fascinating way to watch. I do watch it mindlessly. I don't love it. It is one of my most toxic traits that I do watch the show a lot. I will admit that. But I often watch with the belief that you should be watching it to watch how the system fails people, because Elliot Stabler
definitely
fails people. Olivia Benson fails people. Like I told Laura about one of the episodes where I was like, they pretended like what Olivia did was the same as what this other person did when this other person was trying to get assistance for someone else. And Olivia was trying to get retribution from the person because they hurt Elliot. And it's not the freaking same thing. And the way they treat it was disgusting to me. And it's like, I can't believe that they like built the show on Olivia's back on how amazing she is when she's not. Like she does so many bad things. And like, if you count the number of times these like cops trample over everyone's rights. And like, there was an episode I told Laura about where I was like, oh, I recently rewatched it. And I'm like, this is going on one of the no-go episodes for me because there were a million microaggressions towards one of the police officers when he was showing sympathy because he's like, well, you do not understand the system and how it fails people. And they were like, you just like these kids because they're Black pretty much. And it was just like, what are you talking about? This is horrifying.
Yeah.
And at one point, Elliot makes the statement, which like you could have the discussion of like, I understand you have sympathy for these people, but they did harm this girl and her family is grieving her death. What do you say to them? And how do we make them whole in any way, shape, or form? That is a discussion. What Elliot said was, maybe if you had children one day, you would understand how her family feels.
Oh my gosh.
And the guy got in his face and was like, excuse me, are you saying I do not have sympathy towards this family or the victim? And the captain breaks him up and he goes, we don't speak to each other in this office that way. You need to go cool off. And didn't say a word to Elliot. And I'm like, Elliot was also freaking out of pocket in that statement. He's not allowed to treat people like that. No. And you let him do it at every juncture. And this was not the other police officer's fault. And I was just like, I can't watch this episode ever again because the way they treated this person of color, like, and at one point, like someone is racist towards him and mistakes him for a Hispanic man when he is Native Indian. And it's like, he is Native Indian. He is like, and he said like, they called me a Mexican and like, they're like, and they're like, yeah, you know, people do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is an awful episode. And so it is not a good show. I do not support people watching it, but if you are going to watch it through the lens of make sure you're watching out for what those police officers do because they can't hide how broken and propaganda it is when they're showing those things. It's pretty bad. So
I do like wonder, and I'll get into this in a second, but like you saying like, oh, you know, they can't hide how it lets people down. Do you think that it is reflective of the system and how people employed in the system are, like, pretty accurately?
Probably not to probably not to the nth degree. Like, I think it's almost
Like
worse.
detectives.
I think it's almost better and worse.
Okay.
Like, what SVU tended to show that is harmful is cops are always right if the ends justify the means. That's not true. If you're violating people's due process, it is fascism, even if you get the bad guy. I'm sorry. That is why we set up a system to protect people, to make sure things like that don't happen. And I've told you the purpose of like stopping crime is the purpose should always be to make sure you're not locking up innocent people, not that you're putting away bad guys. So that is broken. The way they show like start to finish how cops solve crimes is so untrue, because cops are much more ineffective than you think they are. And the way they show the justice system of like, oh, don't worry, it's like all these people working together, they're like building a case together, they're doing this together, they're doing this together. Sometimes that is true. Most of the times it is not true.
Sure.
I don't think that the world is as dramatic as they portray in Law & Order SVU. Most cases are not the cases they're showing, like, you know, and also like we're from a small town. I remember one of my friends, his dad was a detective and he worked murder squad. And he's like, yeah, he never has cases. Like, not that many people are murdered. Probably. And usually if they are, it's like gathering evidence and you know exactly who did it. And like, you're not going searching and asking Hayden Panettiere what kind of sex positions her friend was getting into, you know? So I don't think it's as dramatic. I think that crimes are usually a little bit more like easily solved than that. And I don't think it's always as dramatic. Usually the justice system does have requirements of like, you have to disclose everything to the defense. You cannot hide things from them, you know?
Okay.
You have to show non-incriminating material to them. They have to see everything you have. Unless it's like a government discussion, like, you know, like if the police officers are emailing back and forth about something, ascertaining the evidence, I don't believe you'd have to show them that. But, and also guys, I am not a criminal law attorney. Take everything I say with a huge grain of salt.
I'm just asking because you do have some insight.
Right. So in those sense of the words, like it is better because like, it's not as dramatic. It is like much more helpful to make sure people can get off. But I also think shows like Law & Order did their worst because it let ordinary people Hollywoodize the system.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, of course people know that you should ask for a lawyer. That's totally what happens. And they don't recognize the fundamental issue with a cop yelling at you and saying like, you don't need an attorney, and like sticking to your guns and being like, cops are allowed to lie to you. Cops are allowed to get in your face. Cops are allowed to try to get you to talk to them, even though you asked for an attorney. And like, if you need to ask for an attorney, it needs to be forceful. It can't be like, well, maybe I need an attorney. Maybe I need to do this. And I think people watch shows like Law & Order and they're like, well, everyone knows this. And it's like, does everyone have access to a TV? Would everyone watch Law & Order? Right. Would everyone be interested in these things? Would everyone not see the drama of it or understand the like power differentials that go into this? Because like, guys, I'm an attorney. The second I get pulled over, I cry. And I like, that is a problem. Like I am... But like, there are times I've been yelled at by police officers because I'm not answering a question the right way. And it's because I'm confused and it's inappropriate because they are the ones in power in that situation. So like, there's never a point in time where they should be screaming. And we also like we don't teach people, like as a lawyer, I'm not allowed to go into a courtroom and throw a tantrum because someone's not answering the questions the way I like. I can be forceful. I can be withstanding, and I can ask and repeat questions and say like, do you need a minute? Okay, but I do need this answer. This is on the record. You need to answer while this case, you cannot leave this room until this question is answered. Those things aren't factual. And and I think sometimes we allow police officers to get upset because they are put into dangerous situations. I'm not saying that they're not all the time, but we also don't have enough information on stuff like that. So like, they have shown that a lot of studies that say like police officers are in the most danger when they pull someone over. Those studies are faulty. And so now you have these police officers being taught that this is the most danger they're ever going to be in. And so they're in a high stress situation.
I would say then it amplifies it in their minds, making them more stressed and reacting differently to the situation than they would have otherwise.
And again, enough is not pushed on the system. So it's like, okay, then police officers need training on how to deal with high stress situations. Like this, you need to do that. And I think shows like SVU kind of show you like how bad it can get. I think people just don't understand how to ascertain that information sometimes. Like you should watch Law and Order, and when they get angry and when they're screaming and when they have their gun out, it's always from the perspective of the police officer and never from the perspective of the person on the other side of the gun.
Sure.
And that is a choice because we follow these police officers and we humanize them. And it dehumanizes the person who is the victim.
Right.
Like if you think about it, Law and Order SVU reuses like actors all the time. And it's because show to show.
Forget about them.
You forget about them. They're not important anymore. Like that is a huge issue when you think about like it contextually. And when you go a little bit deeper, then this is just a fun know-nothing show.
So to like summarize what you said, would it be fair to say that you think the show maybe is accurate, but amplifies some of the worst of the worst?
I think it
picks out the worst of the worst and just makes an episode out of every single TV show.
Yes and no. It's so hard. Like as such a bad
I guess
answer,
I'm just,
but like,
and maybe not the worst of the worst, but I'm maybe thinking just the cases themselves are like the worst of the worst, like stuff you only see on like national TV. Right. But as far as like the dynamics of the lawyers and the police officers, probably more of just a situation where it's like these things can happen and we need to be cognizant of that and recognize the light that we're looking at this through.
We need to recognize the light we're looking at it through and recognize that some of the actions the police officers are taking are accurate and they're unethical. And that's kind of, I guess, my main point. And some of the best episodes, like there is an episode in Law and Order SVU where they show a girl being taken through the process of what happens after she is raped. I think episodes like that are good. Like because it shows people what it looks like. I think the way it shows like how demonized women get when they report rape, and they are pretty good about telling women it's hard to prove rape in the show. And I think like things like that are helpful for people to understand, but I think people just don't distill the right information. They watch it and they think Elliot Stabler and Olivia should kiss, and not like Elliot Stabler is a bad cop, guys.
Yeah, like there's a lot of problems there. I don't know if they should kiss.
Yeah,
or if they should get other jobs.
Yeah, like, they should all be fired. Like maybe Ice-T shouldn't be. He's sometimes, but no, because he like brutalizes people. Like it's there's so many issues.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think they try to play with certain storylines and make you think about things, because like we were watching another episode last night. I think it was the one right before the one I previously mentioned, where there were it was like a statute of limitations consideration, where it was like, okay, well, it's been 5 years and they have 2 days left to figure out.
File by tonight.
Yeah, we have to file by tonight. We have to figure out who it was, and one of the victims knew who the person was and would not reveal it because of religious reasons or whatever. And then like some of the things they did were just like, you would never do that. Like they put all of the victims together in the room to try and convince the one victim to reveal information, and the way that they spoke to her and everything was just so inappropriate.
The amount of time,
the way that the judges reacted to this situation, where they were just like hard nosed, like, we're not gonna like let you put out an arrest warrant for a John Doe, because then anybody can just put it out for anything. You got all these people coming up with these blood tests that can find anything, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I said to my husband something about like, I don't know if this was like a pointed move, but they made both of the judges men, and I don't know if that was a like purposeful decision or not, but it seemed kind of fitting that it was like that. But
and the way they handle like discussions around rape, I'm like, no, this is actually pretty, accurate moral discussions. And you and I've
Mhm.
talked about like sometimes their moral discussions are way off, but they could have
Sure.
had something interesting there.
Well, and I think that was an episode too where like my husband and I were talking about it, and it like sparked discussion with us and everything, and we had feelings about it. And I think they could have gone a certain way with it, but there were definitely moments throughout the episode where we were like, that was no.
Right.
Why are they doing this?
Where they stick a bunch of women in the room instead of discussing like, hey, some of these women want him put in jail, and she believes in like a different type of justice.
So I know what we'll
and
do.
what
We'll put
does
them
that-
all in the room together and let
Right.
these women scream at her, and that will
Yeah.
convince her to do it. No, it won't.
No, it won't. Like, and that's also rough. It's just not handled well.
Mhm.
And like, there are certain things where it's like, okay, well, the judges aren't wrong. You can't just
Right.
issue subpoenas for 1 million people under generic things. But like, if you have their actual proper blood type that
Right.
is specific
If you
enough
have
to
4
probably
matches, like
Mhm. So when is it appropriate? When isn't it appropriate? That is
Mhm.
not something I have to determine. That is for smarter minds than mine. But yeah, I think like there are elements to it that are accurate, but most of the time it's
Yeah.
just way too off the wall, and they are
Sure.
not asking the right questions.
Sure.
And so I do think some of these shows are harmful. I probably think like me watching a Law and Order SVU is probably a net negative on the
Mhm.
world, but sometimes like, guys, I don't watch the Kardashians. I watch Law and Order SVU. Just leave me alone. Like,
We all have our show.
exactly.
Mine is Love is Blind.
Exactly. Like sometimes you just have one where you're like, I'm not sure
Oh my
that me watching
gosh.
this is a net negative or a net positive to the world, but like it's there. Like,
Love is
and-
Blind. That last season, I've talked about it with Veronica, but the things that have happened.
but I am so glad that Laura is force feeding her husband Law and Order.
Yeah, he's not enjoying it. He's not enjoying it.
I went to watch it with I was watching it one day when my boyfriend came over, and I made him skip a bunch of the scenes because I was like, oh, this is a ludicrous episode. I don't want to watch it because Ludacris is eventually on the show. Obviously, he is Ice-T's nephew. So many funny statements. But like, I was like, oh, like I'm just in the mood to watch Law and Order, but I can't make you keep watching because we're 9 seasons in and it's way more terrible than it once was. But I recently rewatched the earlier seasons, so I can't watch them again. So I was like, I guess we'll watch Criminal Minds instead.
I don't know.
It's not
Honestly, I
good.
think this first season is pretty rough. I don't remember watching any of this first season. So when I was watching it in high school, I must have been into like the 4th or 5th season already. I have no idea.
Yeah.
When during like 2006, 2007 time when what season that was.
That's
but
21 years ago.
yeah. So oof, yikes.
Yeah. Yikes on bikes. Guys, it's not a good show, but it sure makes you have interesting questions.
It does like spark a lot of discussions. And there's something to be said of that too. So
well, in earlier seasons, like the episodes do not have the right language. They do not have they have horrifying crimes where it's like, why was this on TV?
Yeah. Another question, does it grow as a show, which you haven't watched past a certain season, so I guess maybe you don't know.
I honestly think it
because like
doesn't.
the episodes coming out like last week and everything, I'm like wondering, does this grow as a show or
I don't think it does.
Okay.
I honestly like I think they just keep getting
I was willing to
give
it some more credit if it was growing as a show with the times.
I mean, maybe it grows as like with the times, like it grows in language and it grows and like I know like some of the more recent episodes, like, but they still it's just fundamentally a flawed show because it is a show that is told through the narration.
I mean, it has the building
detectives.
blocks that you have to work off of, and it's hard to just remove that one block and have everything just kind of stay there. I don't know.
Yeah, and you keep trying to like ratchet stuff up. So now it has to be like Mariska Hargitay and which man is she going to choose? And it's like, whatever happened to like the fact that this was a criminal procedural? Like,
right. Why does her personal life have to be involved in this? Also, another thing I noticed in this first season, like this is a writing issue in my mind, that all of the people that are detectives became detectives within this because of very personal reasons that connect them. Like some of the people experienced sexual abuse themselves, which made them want to get into sex crimes. Some of them, like Olivia, had specific reasons for getting involved in this. Like the way that they all are connected too closely is, in my mind, a writing issue.
Actually, the only one I really truly liked throughout the show was like he makes pretty good points. Is like Detective Munch. He's just a weird.
He's so corny in the first season,
so
though.
Corny. But he actually was a holdover. So he was originally in Homicide. He was a Baltimore detective.
Okay.
And so he was like actually based on like an American journalist writings. So he's like a little bit more locked and loaded on Law and Order SVU. Like he's a little bit more boring. Like he's just like a guy who's been married a couple of times. He just kind of works the job. He very often like doesn't get that involved, and he's usually like, guys, just do the work. Like, what are we doing here? And he just believes that the government is out to get you. And I'm like, and sometimes he's right. So like, yeah, Munch is he comes off character
that way in the first season, but also there's a lot of corniness where he's trying to get a little too close to the other people, and it's like, your jokes are kind of stepping some bounds here.
Yeah.
And then there's also like him constantly hitting on the coroner, where I'm like, leave the medical examiners alone. Like,
I know, but also the medical examiners, as time goes on. Recently, I was watching an episode where one of them like walks out when the dad's sitting there, and it's like, just so you know, we found semen in her. And I'm like, her father is standing there. That is not okay. Like, she's talking.
I feel like, they would never do that.
She's talking to the detectives. And I'm like, I'm sorry. He needs to leave before you discuss this with the detectives. Don't do that. And it was just they didn't have enough. You could tell it like in that episode, they like just didn't have enough time for the coroner to have her own scene.
Yeah.
So they just brought her in at the end. And I'm like, that's not okay.
Yeah, that's really weird.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, Detective Munch is sometimes, and I'm sure there are still episodes where it's like, Munch, you're terrible. But for the most part, he's like, he's just kind of a kook, and he does the job, which is better than most of them, where it's like Elliot just abuses his family emotionally.
Oh my gosh.
Like
the way he inserts himself into situations and then also takes the things home and puts them on his family. Like, ugh. No, thank you.
Yeah.
This is the Law and Order podcast.
Laura was like, should we do bonus episodes where we watch an episode of Law and Order together? And I'm like, I don't know. If you really want to hear Hannah be like,
here's the thing. Hannah did not respond when I said that. Because I honestly am still leaving that option out there, because I think that would be interesting for us to like pick specific episodes and talk about them.
Oh yeah, if we did like specific episode, like we're trying to push it to Patreon earlier in January, just so everyone knows. But we're going to try to do that. And if we did that's our bonus episode every like once in a while, where we're like, let's just pick one of the random Law and Order episodes.
A really bizarre one.
Yeah. And like people can pick one for us and be like, do the episode on this. And we're like, okay, we'll watch it.
I nominate the episode with John Stamos.
Oh my God. Haunts me. John Stamos episode.
It still haunts me.
I'm not sure if I have ones off the top of my head, because there are certain ones, like there's one guy who like literally stalks Olivia Benson.
It's in the first season.
No, she gets stalked multiple times. No. But there's one who actually literally kidnaps her and like keeps her like locked on a bed, but doesn't actually sexually assault her, because you can never have Olivia Benson actually sexually assaulted, even though like I have so many feelings on that, where it's like, yes, you should not traumatize this woman who's been traumatized 10 ways to Sunday. She should have quit her job. But there's also that weird messaging of like, this is a show that deals with victims of sexual assault. Yeah. And you don't have an actual victim of sexual assault be a main character ever. What is the message of that? Is it that you dehumanize people who have suffered sexual assault? I think it does a little bit. Like, I'm not saying it has to be Olivia Benson. I understand that she is a main character, but like,
we're also not saying that people need to be sexually assaulted to be on TV. That's not
obvious. No. But I'm saying like, this is a show that is supposed to be about the stories, the victims.
The stories of victims. That's what they proclaim it to be. And it's not the stories of victims.
It's not. It is finding the bad guys and beating them up. And like, so I do think that it sends a weird message when that is what happens.
Sure.
Where they always go up to the line with Olivia Benson, but they never like, they're like, but it's Olivia, so she still has to be pure. And it's like, ew. Like, she literally is like, has a child, but she adopted him. So like she in and of herself is like a sexless person in this entire storyline. So just so many thoughts, but I would never do one of those episodes where she's getting tortured because I
no.
don't think I want to do those episodes. But yeah, we would cover it. I'm okay with covering random episodes. I thought you meant every single episode.
Every single episode. Let's start tonight. We'll be doing a podcast for the rest of our lives.
There are other podcasts that do Law and Order SVU. So yeah, no, we'll do that. We can do a random one. We'll put it behind a paywall so people can't hear so much of Hannah being a lawyer. But
I mean, I think it's interesting just to hear your perspective on some of these things because like I don't know some of these things. There was one episode that I watched in this first season where I was like horrified with some of the information and you're like, well, that's actually a thing. So I was like, oh my gosh.
Laura was asking about civil confinement. Look it up. Scary. Yeah, I also, guys, if you are interested in reading about things like this, I highly recommend the books. Oh my gosh, what is it? I believe it's called, I just bought a book called The End of Policing, which I think is a great book. I've heard great things about it and I will be probably listening to it on audiobook, but I wanted to own it. The new Jim Crow laws are greatly edifying. I highly recommend that book. It was excellent as an audiobook. Listen to things that are smarter than me. Again, I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I am not someone who, does these things. So reach out to other things. This is just from my own interest and, having some background and taking classes on this, but read smarter minds that are mine. Definitely recommend those books as a starting off point if you are more interested in hearing information on this. But yeah, so, and then go on our Patreon to hear Hannah yell about Law and Order sometimes.
I already have specific episodes in mind that I'm just like, we need to cover them. We'll do one episode a month. Because after watching most of season 1, I'm like, I don't know how many Law and Order episodes you can watch at one time before you're just like, that's it.
Yeah,
for my husband, it's only 4.
4 is still a lot. Like that's an impressive amount for someone who's kind of bummed out by Law and Order SVU to be like, can we stop?
So funny.
That's amazing. I started watching Criminal Minds with my boyfriend and he just goes, Mandy Patinkin. Mandy Patinkin's on.
Love it.
So, we were at a bookstore the other day and he pointed out a book and he's like, look, Mandy Patinkin. And I was like, what? And he was like, he mentioned this book on Criminal Minds. And I'm like, I don't listen to the book names.
Wow, I was really paying attention.
Right. I'm just watching for the vibes. Yeah. But guys, tell us which Law and Order SVU episodes to cover on our Patreon. If you guys actually watch this hellfire of a show.
Oh my.
And apologies for Hannah's deep dive. If you actually want an analysis on criminal justice and everything, like I said, read this book.
This is actually more me just being curious and asking you. I wouldn't apologize, Hannah.
Okay. But I always feel bad when I'm like, this is something I studied and wrote papers on. Listen to me talk. But also, guys, remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to learn all about our new SVU offshoots, as well as other things, like our upcoming Patreon that we hope to have members for next month. And make sure you're following us at Our Pod. That's OWWR Pod on Instagram, on Hive, and on Twitter. And it's still here. You can also email us at ourpod@gmail.com or go to ourpod.com to read Laura's review as well as some of my reviews. Make sure that you're following along. Next week, we are doing a much lighter episode than Law and Order and the criminal issues of
No, we're not.
Gremlins.
The greatest Christmas movie ever.
Greatest Christmas movie of all time. We will be covering Gremlins. So make sure you've watched that or just listen to us talk about Magpie. Creatures that can talk and no one asks questions about it.
No questions asked at all.
And also make sure that you guys are picking up the Murderbot series because we're covering those in January and we can't wait to see you.
Did we decide on a name for the
It's the Murderbot Diaries.
Oh, so okay. I didn't know if that was a thing or not. I thought that was just you saying that.
I'm pretty sure that was the only suggestion we have, and I love it. It's we're gonna be
just like the Princess Diaries. It's the Murderbot Diaries.
Yeah, we're going to be deep in the Murderbot Diaries. So can't wait to do that. But we will talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.